Hi, and welcome to Drupal Brief. This is an AI-generated brief of another video, podcast, or blog post. If you want to learn more about what's being discussed here, then please go check out the source. This podcast is produced by the team at Drupal Forge. We would love to create more AI-generated briefs like this. Please contact Salim Lakhani on Drupal Slack or LinkedIn and let him know what else you want us to cover. Oh, and if you have not tried Drupal Forge yet, you're missing out. You'll be able to do twice as much in half the time. So go check it out. Okay, that's it. Make sure to click subscribe. And here we go.
Welcome to the Deep Dives, where we cut through the noise and help you stay up to date in the world of Drupal. Today we're diving into issue 674 of the Weekly Drop. It's jam-packed with all the latest news, discussions, and even job opportunities that you need to know.
That's right. This issue covers a wide range of topics. It's really a one-stop shop for everything happening in Drupal.
Bob Kepford over at The Weekly Drop has put together another great issue. In this deep dive, we'll be discussing security issues, updates to Drupal core, interesting articles from across the community, tutorials to help you sharpen your skills, and even some new job opportunities. So let's get started. First up, security advisories. There's a moderately critical cross-site scripting vulnerability. It's SA Core RE 2025-004. So what exactly is a cross-site scripting vulnerability, and why should we care about this one?
Well, a cross-site scripting, or XSS, vulnerability is basically a way for attackers to inject malicious code into a website. When a user visits that website, the code runs in their browser, potentially giving the attacker access to their sensitive information like login credentials, or even allowing them to take control of the user's account.
So it's kind of like a sneaky way to insert a little program into a website that then runs on everyone who visits it. And this particular one is marked as moderately critical. What does that mean in terms of how urgently we should be dealing with it?
Moderately critical means that it's not the most severe level of vulnerability, but it's still pretty serious. Exploiting this vulnerability might require some specific conditions to be met or some action from the user, but it's still something that could be used to do some real damage if it's not patched.
And since this is a Drupal core issue, it could affect pretty much any Drupal website out there, right?
Right. Because it's part of the core software that powers all Drupal sites, everyone running Drupal needs to be aware of this vulnerability and take steps to patch it as soon as possible.
So the takeaway here is pay attention to those official security advisories from Drupal and make sure to update your sites whenever there's a new patch released. Now let's talk about some of the updates to Drupal core itself. It's great to see that the platform is constantly evolving.
Definitely. It shows that the Drupal community is active and committed to making the platform better. One of the interesting updates in this issue is that AJAX responses from views may now be cached. Now, for those of us who aren't super technical, what does that mean in practical terms?
Okay, so views are used to create those dynamic lists of content you often see on websites, things like a blog roll or a list of products. And AJAX allows parts of a web page to update without the whole page having to reload. So by caching the responses from views that are using AJAX, the server doesn't have to work as hard to generate those dynamic parts every time someone visits the page.
Exactly. It means that those dynamic parts of your site can be stored temporarily so that the server can deliver them more quickly to users. This will make your site feel faster and more responsive, especially for content that's accessed frequently.
So it's a win-win for everyone. Faster loading times for users and less load on the server. Another interesting update is that default content can now be assigned to a specific fallback user. What kind of situations would this be useful in?
Well, imagine you're migrating a website to Drupal from a different system, and the information about who created the content doesn't transfer over perfectly. Now, you can set a specific user to be the author for any content where the original author is unknown, or if you're using a script to generate content automatically, you can make sure that all of that content is attributed to a specific user. It's really about maintaining consistency and making sure that your content is always properly organized.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, this next update sounds like it has some implications for how fast websites load. jQuery is no longer included in JavaScript aggregates. Can you explain what that means and why it's important?
Sure. jQuery is a JavaScript library that was very popular for a long time. It made it easier for developers to do a lot of common tasks. Drupal used to include it in its JavaScript aggregates, which are bundles of JavaScript code that get sent to the user's browser to make the site interactive.
So now that jQuery isn't included by default, those aggregates are going to be smaller, which means they'll be downloaded more quickly.
Right. And that means that websites will load faster for users. It also encourages developers to move away from jQuery and use newer ways of writing JavaScript that are more efficient. Of course, you can still use jQuery in your Drupal themes and modules if you need to, but the fact that it's not included by default is a good nudge in the right direction for developers.
It sounds like a good move towards making Drupal sites even faster. There's also mention of a new block plugin interface, create placeholder method. That sounds like something that's going to be most relevant to developers. What's the benefit of this new method?
This new method basically makes it easier for developers to create placeholder blocks in their layouts. Think of it like reserving a space on a page where some content might be loaded dynamically later on, maybe using AJX or based on some other condition. This new method gives developers a more standardized and efficient way to create those placeholders, which will make the development process smoother.
And finally, in the core updates, we have uninstalled extensions will be checked by update status by default. This feels like a no-brainer in terms of security.
Right. Even if a module or theme isn't currently active on your site, if it's still installed, it could be outdated and have security vulnerabilities.
Sure.
By automatically checking the update status of all installed extensions, Drupal is giving site owners a heads up about any potential security risks, even from modules that are currently in use.
So it's a reminder to keep your Drupal installation clean and up to date. Now let's move on to the article section of the Weekly Drop. This is where we get to see some of the interesting discussions and perspectives from the Drupal community. The first article we're looking at is Dry's ByTorch, How AI Could Reshape CMS Platforms. What are Dry's thoughts on how AI might impact Drupal and other CMS platforms?
Well, Dries is the founder of Drupal, so his perspective is always insightful. In this article, he talks about how AI could be used to automate a lot of the tasks involved in creating and managing content. Things like writing content, translating it into different languages, personalizing content for individual users, and even identifying and removing harmful content. It's really about using AI to make content management more efficient and effective.
So it sounds like AI could have a really significant impact on how we use CMSs in the future. The next article is, Does Drupal Have a Future? An Open Letter to My Peers. It's always interesting to see this kind of self-reflection within the community.
It is, and it's healthy for a community to have these conversations. This article is basically a discussion about the challenges and opportunities that Drupal faces and what the community needs to do to ensure that the platform stays relevant and continues to grow. The author might be talking about competition from other platforms, the need for Drupal to adapt to new technologies, or maybe even the future of the Drupal community itself.
So it's not necessarily about predicting the future of Drupal, but more about having a conversation about the different possibilities. Next up is an article by irixevam.dev called 900-768 times yes to auto updates. It seems pretty clear where the author stands on this issue.
It does. This article is all about the benefits of enabling automatic updates for Drupal, both for security and for convenience. The author is arguing that automatic updates are the best way to make sure that your site is always running the latest and most secure version of Drupal.
Which makes a lot of sense, because who wants to be constantly worrying about whether their site is up to date? The next article is James Oakley, using Radix as a Drupal base theme. For those who aren't familiar, what is a base theme in Drupal and why would you want to use one?
A base theme in Drupal is basically a starter theme that provides a foundation for other themes to build on. It includes basic styling and functionality that are common to many websites. Radix is a popular base theme that's known for its clean code, responsive design, and accessibility. Using a base theme like Radix can save you a lot of time and effort when you're creating a new Drupal theme.
It's like a pre-built framework that you can customize to your needs. We also have an article from the Drop Times, Building Community-Driven Drupal Solutions, J.D. Leonard, on member platform and open source. This seems to be all about the importance of collaboration within the Drupal community.
Yeah, this article focuses on how the Drupal community comes together to build solutions for common problems. They might be talking about a specific project, like the Member Platform Initiative, or just about the overall benefits of working together in an open source community. It highlights the power of collaboration and how it helps Drupal to evolve and improve.
It's definitely one of the things that makes Drupal unique. And finally, we have an article titled, Time to Break Up with Drupal 7 Will Help You Move On. Free audit available at Optasy. It sounds like a pretty urgent message for anyone who's still using Drupal 7.
It is. Drupal 7 is no longer supported, which means it's not getting any more security updates. This article is a reminder that if you're still running a Drupal 7 site, you're putting yourself at risk. They're encouraging people to migrate to a newer version of Drupal and offering some resources to help with the process.
A very important message. especially considering the security risks involved in running an outdated version of Drupal. Now let's move on to the tutorial section. First up is Dries Bytart, installing Drupal CMS or Drupal Starshot using DDEV. DDEV seems to be a popular tool these days for local Drupal development.
Absolutely. DDEV is a great way to set up a local development environment for your Drupal projects, and this tutorial walks you through the process step by step. The mention of Drupal Starshot is interesting too. That's a new initiative aimed at simplifying the process of setting up and using Drupal, so this tutorial might also cover how to use Starshot with DDEV.
Sounds like a great resource for anyone who's new to Drupal development or wants to try out DDEV. Next, we have Drupal Faceted Search with TypeSense and Instant Search Color Field. This sounds like it's going to be most useful for people building websites with a lot of content.
Yeah, faceted search is a way to filter search results based on different criteria like categories, tags, or even colors. This tutorial shows you how to implement faceted search in Drupal using TypeSense and Instant Search, which are tools designed to make faceted search fast and user-friendly.
So it's all about improving the search experience for users, especially on sites with a lot of content. And finally, we have SpecB. Writing smarter Drupal code starts with package.json. Now, package.json is a file that's used in a lot of modern JavaScript development. How does it apply to writing Drupal code?
Package.json is used to manage the dependencies for your JavaScript projects. It basically keeps track of all the external libraries and tools that your code relies on. This tutorial is probably about how to use package.json effectively when you're developing Drupal themes or modules that use JavaScript.
So it's about making sure that your code is well organized and easy to manage. Now let's take a look at the releases section. It looks like there's been a lot of activity recently.
Yeah, it's great to see how much work is going into Drupal development. We've got new releases for several modules, including Domain Relay Access, Eka, and GraphQL, all providing updates and improvements. We also have releases for Drupal core, versions 10.3.14, 10.4.5, 11.0.13, and 11.1.5. This shows that Drupal core is constantly being refined and improved, with bug fixes, security updates, and new features. There are also new versions of Drupal SimStarter and Summons, which suggests that there's ongoing work on new ways to get started with Drupal. And there's an update for Lando, version 3.24.2, which is a popular local development environment for Drupal.
It's great to see how active the development community is. Now, in the podcast section, the Weekly Drop highlights Talking Drupal, #493 Drupal Developer Survey. This sounds like a great way to learn more about the Drupal community.
Yeah, developer surveys give us a snapshot of what's happening in the Drupal community, what tools and technologies people are using, and what challenges they're facing. This episode of Talking Drupal will probably dive into the results of the latest Drupal developer survey, providing some interesting insights into the current state of Drupal development.
Definitely worth checking out if you're interested in learning more about the Drupal community. And finally, we have the jobs section. Are there any interesting opportunities this week?
It looks like there are a few open positions for Drupal developers. We've got a full-stack Drupal engineer position at For All Promos, a lead Drupal developer position at Third and Grove, and a DevOps full-stack developer position at Spry Digital. All of these are US-based, with the first one specifically mentioning Connecticut. And of course, there's the jobs.drupal.org website, which is always a great resource for finding Drupal jobs all over the world.
So there you have it. Another week. Another jam-packed issue of the Weekly Drop. From security advisories to core updates, insightful articles, helpful tutorials, and even job opportunities, there's something for everyone in the Drupal community.
It's a testament to the vibrancy of the Drupal ecosystem. There's always something new to learn and explore, and this newsletter does a fantastic job of curating and highlighting the most important developments.
So what are some of the key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, first and foremost, stay on top of security updates. Make sure you're aware of any security advisories issued by the Drupal security team and that you apply the necessary patches to your sites. Also, keep an eye on the ongoing improvements to Drupal core. The updates we discussed today are aimed at making Drupal sites faster, more flexible, and more secure. And don't forget to check out the articles and tutorials. They're a great way to learn from other members of the community and to expand your Drupal skills.
And if you're looking for a new challenge, take a look at the job opportunities listed in the newsletter and on jobs.drupal.org. It's a good time to be a Drupal developer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And don't feel overwhelmed by the amount of information in this issue. Just focus on the areas that are most relevant to you and your work. And if something piques your interest, be sure to dive deeper by checking out the links provided in the newsletter.
That's all for this week's deep dive into the Weekly Drop. We hope you found it informative and helpful.
We encourage you to check out the full newsletter for yourself and to explore any of the topics that caught your attention.
And as you reflect on all the developments happening in the Drupal world, we leave you with this question. What's one aspect of the Drupal ecosystem that you're most excited to see evolve in the coming year? Thanks for joining us.
All right. What did you think? Did the AI-generated thing work for you? Let us know. Anyway, to close off this podcast, I just wanted to remind you that this brief was a fully AI-generated summary, and we take no credit for the original content. If you want more AI-generated summaries like this, then let us know. Contact Salim Lakhani on Drupal Slack or LinkedIn. By the way, we're automating the entire process from start to finish, so these briefs can be generated hands-free and on schedule. You want something else covered? We're happy to do it for you. This brief was brought to you by Drupal Forge. Drupal Forge is the new #1 platform to try, demo, and develop Drupal sites, and it is completely free to use. It is a community-supported nonprofit platform run by volunteers, just like yourself. Come join us.